Hello, in this video I'm going to show you beginning the end how to make these fingerless gloves. Now this one I don't have the ends woven yet, but you can see it's got 3 2-stitch cables on the front. The middle one, the collars are twisted around each other, and in the back we've got like a zigzag going on. Now the second glove I'm actually going to make with the collars opposite. Now the yarn, well, I'll go over the supplies that you'll need. You'll need a row counter. I am using the 15-inch 3/8 gauge 90 peg long loom from Cindy Wood Crafts with 2 wedges. Loom tool, crochet hook, which that's just to weave in your ends, and something to measure gauge will be a big help as well. I'll go ahead and leave that out. Gotta turn to my notes. Alright. Okay, so first of all, let's talk about the yarn for a minute. I gotta double check. I want to say this is Swedish. It's not American. Actually, someone had to look it up for me. Wool, that's wool. So this is 50% alpaca, 50% wool. Actually feels pretty nice. And this yarn you will get in your August classic shipment from Yarn Box. All the information is in the description below. And you will get 4 skeins. So it's just 2 of each color. And this doesn't have, you can see all the information on it. I don't really know how to translate it, so I just actually took one, ran it through my yarn winder. It's about 125 yards, and now it's from Yarn Block 916. Move that over there. So what we're going to do is the first glove I made on this side. I had to sit there and think for a minute. It's made from the top down. So I made the first glove on this side. So I'll make the second glove on this side. But you got to figure out your gauge so you know how many pegs you need to use for this. So to do that, you grab the yarn you want to use, you grab the loom you want to use, and cast on a few stitches. I would cast on about 15 to 20 stitches and do like 15 to 20 rows. And the reason for that is so that you've got a pretty consistent amount of stitches to figure out your gauge exactly. And to figure out the gauge, what you do is you can use a regular ruler if you want, which typically you want to lay it flat, but I'm going to hold it up so you can see exactly what I'm doing. Now you want to measure, you want to count how many stitches are in 1 inch. You want to know how many go this way and how many go this way. You don't really need to know how many rows this way, but I have it in the pattern just so it's like that's how you gauge. So we've got one, the little V's here. That V is 1 stitch, so 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now if you're concerned and it looks like it's a half stitch, just keep counting, 7, 8, up to 2 inches or however big you want. And then if I counted all the way to 2 inches, and I had 12 stitches, I divide that by 2 and it'd be 6 for 1 inch. And to count your stitches up, it's the V's. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So 9 rows at 6 stitches wide makes 1 square inch. That's how you figure that out. Now the math behind it is you want to, oh, I forgot my tape measure. You need to get a tape measure and measure your wrist. My wrist is 6 inches around, so you want to times how many pegs longwise by how many inches to get how many pegs you need on the loom. So every 6 pegs makes 1 inch. So 6 times 6 equals 36. I can't do 36 on this loom. I can do 35. And that is perfect because the cables will give more stretch to the front. So you don't have to worry about that. So cast on 35 pegs, which we are going to use this side. And the 35 would be, let me see, 1, 2, 3, 1. Let me see, is that where it would be? I think it'd be right here. Put it where I think it's going to be, and then tighten it up and count. Okay. You get it right in between. Tighten it up. And then you just count the circle to make sure it's right, which that's my 35. Yeah, because this has moved. Now I want to talk about marking your loom. I have lost a rubber band on this, but it's fine. What I'm marking is I need to mark the area on the back that I'm doing this V shape, and I need to mark the area on the front that I'm doing my cables. So we got 3 cables on the front. 1, 2, 3. 1 should be rubber band right there. 2, 3. And then we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pegs on the back right here that the V thing on the back is done across. The way I measure and figure out where I want to put these rubber bands, let's start from your wedge. From your wedge, go to start whichever side. You want to do them both on the same. So this will say peg 1, 2, 3. Then we'll put a rubber band around 2 pegs, skip 2 pegs, put a rubber band around 2 pegs, skip 2 pegs, put a rubber band around 2 pegs. These marked pegs are the pegs we're going to cable on. 2 pegs before, in between, and after, you will purl those pegs for the entire project except for your brim. This is what will leave that inset area that's going to cause the cables to pop out. Directly behind the middle of it, that middle one directly behind it, is where we're going to mark the 6 pegs, which it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, peg 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11 if you're counting from this back peg. So then I went ahead and marked both sides at the same time, and what I done is I took another long rubber band and just put over top these pegs to hold these rubber bands on. If not, you're going to lose your rubber bands, but you can always recount later. And this wedge I'm just leaving in there because I'll be using it here in a little bit when I do the thumb area. Okay, so now we can get started. My last one, make sure I'm pulling the, yeah, make sure I had the center pull. We start from the top, work our way down. This one, I start with the yellow, so I'm going to start with blue. I'm going to do this one exact opposite. So this will be blue, and this will be yellow. Now for our cast on, I'm actually going to start in the middle of these back pegs, just because I'm doing a garter stitch a garter stitch edging, and it does have a little bit of a seam right here. So I'm doing it right in the middle of the back of the glove, so it's not going to be noticeable. And we're going to do a chain cast on. So do a slip knot. And let me zoom this in some. We got a slip knot here. And there's 6 pegs marked, so I'm going to start with that 3rd peg. You tighten your knot. Take that little tail to the inside. We'll just weave that in later. You got the loop. Take the loop behind the next peg. Pull the working yarn through. Loop behind. Working yarn through. Loop behind. Working yarn through. You do this all the way around and put your last, when you get to this peg right here, you just put the loop on that peg and tighten it up. These won't be connected, but that's okay. So go ahead and finish that up. Okay, so our cast on is done. You can see this is not connected. I just put that loop on the last one and tightened it up. The yarn kind of looks like it's coming from this peg, but it's actually from behind this one. So what we're going to do for our brim is 9 rows of garter stitch. If you don't like the ridge right here that's sticking up, do your first row flat stitch. I did my first row purl stitch, which I will show you. If you're unfamiliar with the stitches, I'm just going to show them real quick. I do have other videos that can go over this better. For a purl stitch, put your hook down through the top of the loop on the peg, working yarn underneath, pull the working yarn up. You created this new loop. You take the old loop off, put that new loop on. Your first row is purl stitched all the way around. When you're done with your first row, your second row is a flat stitch. A flat stitch, all it is just holding the working yarn over the loop on the peg, taking your hook and taking that loop over. So you're going to alternate 1 row of purl, 1 row of flat stitch for 9 rows. When you're done with row 9, do not cut your yarn, leave your yarn, and then we will add in the blue on the back. See, there's where I added it in. We'll add in the blue on the back, and then we will keep going from there, and I'll show you how to do your cables and everything. Go ahead and get that done, and then we'll go on from there. Once those first 9 rows are done, you want to stop in the middle of your zigzaggy part. You know, whichever glove you're working on, whichever side, you just want to kind of do your starts and stops in that center point, because that way any seams that you're left with will be on the back of the glove and not going up the front or anything. Now for this, as you can see, I haven't wove my ends in here yet. It's pretty simple what we're going to do. We just got to make sure we're doing it opposite. So this glove, the blue is on this side, and the gold or yellow, whatever you want to call it, it's on this side, the side of the thumb. Our thumb is going to be done over here because that's the only side we can move out to do the thumb. So that tells us that the yellow needs to go on this side. I just think it'll look really neat doing the collars opposite. You don't have to. You can do the collars the same for both if you want. I just really wanted to see what it would look like with them opposite each other. Let me do a little zoom in here. Now, for this back part here, and all the way up to here, so from here to here, you're going to flat stitch. Actually, from here to here, the entire loom for the rest of the project, you will flat stitch. These two you'll purl, E-wrap, purl, E-wrap, purl, E-wrap, purl. And that's just to give you the indents around the cables. Okie doke, let's get started. Okay, so we have 6 pegs marked, so we want to start with peg number 3. And all I'm doing is you're putting the tail back here, and I'm actually going to pull it up and hold it down with my pinky, or just any finger, so it doesn't come loose. And all we're doing is our flat stitch. So we're going to hold that string over, do a flat stitch, and that is it to get it started. Most of the time I will run a couple strands together, tie them in a knot, weave them in, but the knots can feel really bulky, especially on that back part of your hand, so I don't really suggest doing knots on this project. If you are tying in new string, then maybe you just got to look at where it's going to show up. If it's going to be right on the palm of your hand, or in an area that may make it difficult to use at all, or it's going to be bothersome because you'll be able to feel it, you may want to change and do something different. Okay, I'm going to work to this middle peg. Might help if I zoom out so you can see what I'm doing here. I'm going to work to this middle peg with this gold whatever collar, and then I'll go back and I'll work all the way to the middle peg with the blue, and I'll kind of show you how you start twisting the collars together, because if you don't twist them together right, there will be holes all along where your collars join in, even in the front. I'll show you some of the cables. See, this cable I didn't twist very good, so there's a hole there. If you like it that way with the holes, just make sure you do it the same all the way through. The first couple I did one way to see how they turn out, and then I did them a different way and see the difference the second way that's not pulling apart. Okay. So I worked to 2 pegs before my first marked peg, which if it helps you can mark those 2. Oops, I didn't get the whole strand. We're doing a purl stitch. Maybe. There we go. Purl stitch. Purl stitch. E-wrap, E-wrap. Purl stitch. Purl stitch, and we are at the middle, which is just 1 E-wrap, because one half this cable we're doing one color, the other half we're doing another color. Go ahead and take those 2 stitches over for those E-wraps. There we go. Now we're back here, and we're going to go all the way around this way. We don't really want a hole, so this we can weave in later, but I'm still twisting that around so it's kind of locked in, and then when I do pull this string and weave the ends in, if there's like a little hole there at all, it will fill it in. So see, I just twisted one time, and we're going to kind of just forget about it. Get that first one going, tighten that up a bit, and then do your flat stitch all the way to here, purl 2, E-wrap 2, purl 2, and E-wrap that last one, and I'll show you what to do from there. We got row 10 done. Now every 4 rows we're going to cable, which I'll show you that when we get to it. But I'm going to do, when I get to my first cable row will be, I'll use row 14 as my first cable row, so I can keep the number 4 in my head and I'm not cabling on odd rows. I hope that makes sense. So now what we got to do is we got to get the yellow back here, and we got to get the blue back here, but we don't want a hole there. So we take the yarn, cross it once. That's not going to work because this side will be yellow, this side will be blue. Cross it a second time. Now these pegs we are doing an E-wrap on. So we're going to pull the yarn out both sides and E-wrap. And then I just hold them down, take the bottoms over the top, and that will keep there from being any type of hole there because the yarn's connected together. Now for this back side, our zigzag started in the middle and we got to go back and forth. So you just decide which direction you're going first, which this really doesn't matter either way. But I will go ahead and have my yellow come all the way over and then go back. You can do either way though. What we're going to do is you will purl 2. It might help if I have that in the screen for you, sorry. Purl a couple, E-wrap a couple, purl a couple, and then we are going back to our flat stitch, which is just a few pegs. So let me zoom this out so I'm not blinding you here, and I'll just do this right along with you. Which you'll notice if it's easier for you to hold it like that, more as what they call a U-stitch, that's fine. Or if you want to hold it just like that as a flat stitch, that's fine. I usually hold it, I still call it a flat stitch, but typically I kind of pull it down behind. That just helps with any tension issues. Okay, Now this is our first row coming back with that yellow, so don't pull these stitches very tight. You don't want to loosen them up. Alright, so we're back at that beginning peg where we cast on with the yellow, but we need the yellow to eventually end all the way over to this end. So all we're going to do is each time we are going to go over one more with the yellow until we're at this peg. And then we'll start with the blue and go over one more with the blue until we're at this peg. And then you just go back and forth doing that. And this is the outcome. If you like the zigzag, you can do the glove with just the zigzag down the front or the back or whatever. Or you can do just how I'm doing. There's a lot of ways you can alter this some. But what we're going to do now is we've already done our first peg here. You're going to take your blue and you're going to stop right there on the last blue peg, and I'll show you how to twist these strings together and keep going, and that'll be your row 11. I'm back to that in blue. This is the end of row 11. Go ahead and mark that. Now what we do, it's a little different because we're doing flat stitches here. We're not doing E-wraps like we do on the other side where we change colors. But again, you twist the yarn. Either way you want to twist the yarn does not make a difference. Just try to keep consistent. So I twist the yarn so that the yellow is following the yellow and the blue is following the blue. This time we're actually going to take and hold the yarn kind of in between those two pegs and in front because we're doing flat stitches. So flat stitch one, flat stitch the second one. Then you just take both of them, work back to this middle. You're always going to work straight to the middle in the front, the middle of that cable. What we're going to do to row 14, just going back and forth. So you'll work all the way over to here with both collars. That'll be row 12. Work all the way over here. Your yellow will be on this one. That'll be row 13. Work back to the middle, row 14, and then I will show you how to cable. Got done with row 13. I'm on row 14. I didn't work all the way to the middle. As you can see, I've got one more over here, one more row of the gold. I'll be at the end of that. Just give you an idea where I'm at. But I went ahead and started to work the rows. So I've got the yellow for row 14 to these first marked pegs. And over here, I've done, did I go to the first? Yeah, I've done the same, went to the first marked peg. So these two are purled. The rest of this is flat stitch. It doesn't matter which way you go. You're just going towards the center. Things to remember, you pick right now which way you want your cables to cross. If you want them to twist left or if you want them to twist right. Because you want to do the exact same thing for the whole project. You may want a cable needle. That's completely up to you. But I will show you. You're going to notice like the cable here and the cable here, it's going to come out looking the same, but I'm going to do them a little different. And that's just because I'm coming from different directions. So just keep in mind the different ways you're doing it. So I'm going to have the cable cross over to, what did I do for this one? We'll just do the opposite. Okay, so for this one we are going to have the cables are twisting. Actually, it was made. I gotta think about which way I done it on the loom. They're left cross cables. Well, it turns out looking right crossed up here. What we're going to do is we're going to take these second cables, switch them with the second peg, switch it with the first peg. So I'll start with this one over here. What you're going to do is you're going to E-wrap your first peg. Take the bottom over the top. We're actually going to take and remove that from the peg. You make your loop big, put it back to the side. We want this to be on this peg, so we're going to take the stitch from the second peg off. I guess that didn't need to be real big. Pick that stitch and put it on that second peg. Take the stitch I'm just holding, put on the first peg, and then kind of tighten that up, E-wrap that second peg a second time to lock that in. If you feel better, you can get a cable tool to hold the stitches, but with a 2-stitch cable, you don't really need to. Some of them it may help a little, but it's not necessary. So we are going to purl 1, purl 2, E-wrap that one, and that will come off, which I'll show you. If you want, you can just put your cable tool in there, tighten it up, and that stitch isn't going to go anywhere. Now for this one, we will E-wrap the first one. Go ahead and take that stitch off. You're going to take your, I just set that back there, take your second peg, take that stitch off, put it on the first, and take that first peg, put back on. I'm going to tighten it up. Go ahead and E-wrap that a second time. And then I pull it back this way and tighten it some more. And then we have 2 to purl. Oh, and we're losing that stitch. I'm just going to leave it. For me, it's easier just to leave it hanging out. Okay, so we are going to purl that middle one, pull it off, and we are always taking the second ones over to the first for this glove. For the next glove, you can either do it the same or you can take the first over to the second. So we've got the blue crossing on top of the gold. And there those are. So that is the end of row 14. To start row 15, we're in the middle here. So we're going to start with E-wrapping both of these and then keep going. But you're going to notice we got to get this one, we got to get this one, and they're kind of twisted right now. So you want to make sure those are kind of tight. And just twist the yellow behind the blue so that we're actually connecting them. And then E-wrap both. Take your bottom. It might help if I show that a little better. Take the bottom over the top. Tighten them again. Then twist them back the other way. And your yarn's going in the correct direction again. So you'll purl this. You're going to do 3 more rows and then you'll have a cable row. See, in this one we'll work the yellow all the way to this last peg on this side. That's marked. And for the end of row 15, and then for row 16, we'll start the blue, 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 blue. You want to just go back and forth. You don't want to have this all yellow and then turn it all blue over there, else you won't have this shape going on. But right now you're going to do, we're on row 14. We're going to work to row 21. Or if you want, you can just restart and do, if it's easier for you to count 4s this way, because on every 4th row, you're going to do a cable row. And we just did a cable row. Row 4 is done. We're on row 5 now of this part, because we got to do this part right here, and this is just 12 rows. Or row 10 to 21 if you don't want to stop counting there. So either 10 to 21 or 1 to 12. But so for row 4, 8, and 12, you will cable. And then once you cable row 12, you're going to stop, and then we will start the thumb. So go ahead and get to row 12. We're on row 6 now. I just wanted to make a note. When you come back, you're going to notice I've got the yellow yarn here, the blue yarn here. I haven't done these 2 middle ones yet. I wanted to show you how to do those and how to twist to go back and do the rest. It's okay. You just bring the yarn behind and E-wrap. Same with this side. Bring the yarn behind, E-wrap. Right now it doesn't really matter which yarn's in what direction. But you do twist and then do your double E-wrap again for the next row, because I just finished, keep marking my row, I finished row 5, now I'm starting row 6. And then I always kind of twist them both ways and tie it, not tie it, but tighten it, I mean. And then you don't have to like twist and twist the yarn together because it's already wanting to go in this direction. So the least amount of times you have to twist a yarn to be heading in the right direction is what you want to do. That's the way you want to do this. And now see, I'm already at the end here. So for row 7, which I just finished row 6, for row 7, you will go all the way over here and you'll get this first one. Then row 8, you'll get that one. Row 9, 10, 11, 12, and then you'll start back with your yellow, back and forth. But just go ahead and get to row 12 done. And then I will show you, actually, if you'll do row 7 and row 8, I'll show you how to do another cable row. Alright, I'm on row 8 and I'm back to this middle cable. I already cabled the first set and the third set because they're the exact same. They're going to be the same for the entire project, so I wasn't going over them again. But as you can see right here, we got to cross these collars again. But this time it's always going to be that second collar crossing over the first. So we've already crossed the blue over the yellow. Now we got to cross the yellow over the blue. And what we're going to do is we're still going to E-wrap. Take that off. Then we'll do... See, I've got the blue off, so the string from the yellow is going to be going in front of the blue. So take your yellow one off second and move it over and tighten it up. And then take that loop from the blue one, put on and tighten it up. And you can kind of see where it's a little, you can see that's going that way. You just got to remember you want the yarn in front that's going to be crossing over. So from here we've got the yarn all back in the same direction where it's going to want to go in the same direction. So you got row 8 done. So row 9 we're going to twist to where the collars are back facing the same way. See, we're going to twist it twice where before we just had to twist it once. Go ahead and E-wrap those 2 pegs. Take your bottoms over the top. And then just keep going about the pattern. Go to row 12 and I'll show you what to do. On this back half over here, if you ever get confused about which way, if you're supposed to pick up this peg with yellow or pick this peg up with blue, just look behind it. So you can see the yellow here. You can see where it's starting. I'll show it again as the project goes along. But you'll see the zigzag pretty easily on the inside, so you'll know which way to go. First 12 rows are done, and what you've just done is this section right here, which it's coming down through the loom like this. And it's just now, should be getting long enough to where you can barely see. It's just starting to poke out from behind. And the side with the cables on it, the cables are a little chunkier, so you can see it's going to be a little longer, which is kind of nice because it goes up over the knuckles a little better. Here, I'll put this one back on and show you what I'm talking about. And see, I made mine very fitted. You can make yours a little looser if you would like. See, it comes down in the back here, but it still covers your knuckles up. I've noticed with a lot of the ones I make where it's the same on both, you end up getting like where this wants to just always curl because it's up too far. But with this pattern, it seems to be, for me, it's just absolutely perfect. I'm going to take that off there. And keep in mind, we're doing the colors opposite. Right now what we're going to do is you're not going to cut the yarn. You're going to leave both of these hooked. We need enough yarn just to do this thumb area. And I'm not opening up my second skein. You do have 2 of each of these, so you can just use your second one if you want. But there's more. I've already made 1 set of gloves out of this, so I'm going to do my best to see if there's enough yarn, because of course I forgot to measure the first one, but I believe there's going to be enough yarn to make 2 full sets, and then maybe even still have a little bit, not 2 full sets, 1 full set of gloves out of just 2 of these, and then you'll have your second your second 2 skeins that you can do whatever else you want with. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave all this hooked to the loom, because the thumb is just, was it 8 or 9? The thumb is just 8 rows of garter stitch. And we're going to be using this end of the yarn. So you will want to pay a little more attention. You don't want to get them all tangled up. But right now what we need to do is we need to get the thumb area set up. I want to take this off for a moment and I want to show you something. We're using a flat stitch. The flat stitch is a lot tighter. If you've made any of my other glove patterns, typically I would use like an E-wrap, or on a larger gauge loom, you just have more stretch and you can actually take the stitches off and place one on this peg, place one on that peg. The tension is pretty tight and you don't want to risk breaking the yarn. You're not going to break the pegs. You don't have to worry about that with this loom. The pegs actually have, it sounds weird, but they actually reinforce the plastic they use. I forget exactly, it's like a nylon, I believe. But for the smaller pegs, they reinforced them with, there's glass in them. So that's why they have, like, see this bend they have to them? And it makes them very, very, very strong. So I'm just using a cable needle. I'm putting both of those stitches, if I can catch just that stitch. Nope. Oh, I keep getting stuck there. Sorry, I'm awkward, and I'm trying to do this where you guys can see exactly what I'm doing. Doesn't help with my natural awkwardness. There we go. So I just put it on a cable needle because the way the cable needle is shaped, it'll do a very good job of just holding all this back out of the way. I'm going to push those stitches down. Not all of them, just the beginning ones here, just to keep them out of the way. And now we can take, and I want to show you something. If you end up with one of your wedges is a little thinner than the second wedge, you want to put your thinner wedge in first because this will be removed. And we want it back in the same spot it was. You just got to reverse it because you want those slots facing towards what you're working on. See? You want them facing this way in between the first two empty pegs right here. And this one, I already had them switched around from the first glove. So that'll be up this way. And I dropped my washer. Got, put that on there. And then tighten it up. We're going to do, this is done on 12 pegs. So we're going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So let me do that again. You should be doing 4 on each side. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And what I did is I put this wedge right here is going to stay in the project for the rest of it. Now you're going to move it down some to do the decrease for this, but we'll worry about that when we get to it. This one right here will be removed. So these little washers overlap a bit. So you want that one that's going to be removed overlapped. It just makes it a little easier down the road, and we're not making this big enough. It's just a little thumb area. So it's not like it's going to be so big that not being able to pull it all the way down through is going to make a difference, because it's not. We've got our 12 pegs marked. Got a slip knot going. So we are going to do a chain cast on just like we did with the other part. Now, and we want a little bit of a longer tail here because you're going to end up with a small hole right here when you're done that you're going to need to kind of sew up. So you can use both strands because there'll be the end strand for this and the beginning strand. You can use those to help sew that up. I'm just going to kind of get you started on doing your chain cast one. It's just the same. You know, we're going up the side 4. I'm We got these two over. See, I don't have those quite even, which it won't make a big difference if you don't, but it is completely adjustable. You can just loosen them up and put them wherever you want to put them. But you're going to do your chain cast on all the way around and on this peg. So you're only going to be using 12 pegs. And then you're going to do, just on these 12 pegs, 8 rows of your garter stitch, just like you did for the first 9 rows. But what you're going to do is you will E-wrap a row, purl a row, E-wrap, you'll do the same thing you did right here. But instead of for 9 rows, you're just going to do 8 rows. It just doesn't need to be, if you want to do 9 rows, you can do 9 rows. It doesn't necessarily have to be as long, is the only thing. You just want to make sure that you end on a purl row. Go ahead and get that done, and I will show you what to do from there. The 8 rows for the thumb are done, and I'll put this other glove on again so you can see exactly how long the thumb is, because you can adjust this, like all aspects of this are completely adjustable. I wanted the thumb down below the joint so it wasn't like bending and catching, and for me, for length of my thumb, 8 rows was perfect. You can make it longer, you can make it shorter. You just want to try to, your last row, do a purl stitch row, because that will, see how that is? If I'd done it the other way, it would have ended up like this, and I didn't want that. And now, we just go right back into our pattern, and we're going to do 16 rows, just normal, following the design every 4 rows, which row 12 was our last, I want to get up to row, so row 12 was our last last row on here, and it was a cable row. So if you want, I'm just going to restart my counter, and in that way I can just do 1 to 4 every 4th row. I'll do the cable, and then I will, it's easier for me to keep track by 4s that way instead of doing the 12 and then adding 8 more to that for the thumb. But right now what you can do is this end tail that you're using from your yellow, where you're using both ends, the part for the thumb you can actually take and cut because it is no longer needed. Now we do have, got this twisted up a little bit, so which this will happen as you're working on it. Make sure I'm untwisting it the correct way though. So I'm going to untwist this a bit, and then I'll kind of show you how to go from here, because now we need to take this loom out. Well, that wedge, sorry. We need to take that wedge out, and we got to put these stitches back on. But this side, you won't need to use any stitch holders because your last stitch is right here, and that's a loose stitch. So it's one that you'll be able to adjust to move over. Now this stitch right here is going to be kind of tight, but this stitch you're going to take and move it right over to the closest yellow peg. Oh, that one wasn't that bad. And this one we're going to do the same thing to the yellow. Oh, we want it off the peg to the yellow peg over here, and then you tighten that up a little bit. This wedge is now empty. So see, here's why I put the washer on top, because I can just loosen this up, take it apart, and I got to kind of wiggle it through a little bit, but wiggle that out. Don't drop all your pieces on the floor like I just did. I don't want to lose these because I love the new wedges. The washer and everything in them are just so perfect, and it's so adjustable, and they stay exactly where you want them. So I just go ahead automatically when I'm done and put it on the floor because I'm clumsy. Put it back on the loom just at the other end, because we're not going to be using this. It's going to be out of the way and it shouldn't bother you at all. So this is what we got. Take this string, just pull down through the middle, because you're not going to need any that other. I have it kind of coming over here right now, but pull both of those down. These we will use to sew up, because there's going to be a little hole right here, and that's all the sewing you got to do other than just weaving in ends. And what we're going to do is, we are on this back side. We're going to start working back around this way. So we will take the stitch off. Now let me just see which one comes off easier. And that's just the direction. Here we go. Now these stitches right here are going to be a little tight, so I'm very cautious when taking that off there. So I've got that stitch off. I'm going to move it over and place it on this white peg. You're going to see that the peg's going to want to bend on me. That's perfectly fine. Hence the nice aspect of having the glass in the mold. There we go. I had to twist it to get it to go on there. To get it to easily go on there. And this will leave on that stitch until we get to this side, because once we knit this one off, it'll loosen it up to where we can put that over there pretty easily. But right here we are on the back side of the loom with the zigzag still. So just like we've been doing, we are crossing it. This is the flat stitch side, so the flat stitch side. We pull the yarn in front of the pegs and take the bottom over the top. And take the bottom over the top on that one. And then we just work towards the middle on the opposite side, which is in between those two. Which I will go ahead and get this going part of the way around so you can just kind of see what it looks like. We're coming up to this peg. You're going to notice those are pretty tight on there, so it may be easier to take just one stitch off at a time. We go to the yellow. We're just straight connecting them because we're going to be working in the round for the rest of the project. There's no other little sections that we have to take out. We will have a decrease point, but the decrease point, you will be pretty surprised at how easy the decrease actually is. You just got to keep paying attention to your marked pegs. This one right here, oops, I didn't get that. Here we go. This one right here has 2 on it, which, see, I'm going to try. See, I was able to take both those over at the same time. Now we are to this side, and you can already tell it's a lot looser. See how easily it was to get that one on there? I still want to take one over at a time though, I think. Oh, they've twisted. Alright, do this very slow so I don't pop off that other stitch. There we go. I was able to take both over at the same time. I'm at my 2 before the marked, so I go back to my purl, E-wrap, purl, E-wrap, and then I come back around with the other side. And so from here for the next, what did I say, next 16 rows, you're going to be working in the round. Just use the blue on this side, use your gold on this side, do your cables every 4th row, and that will get you down to here on the glove. So go ahead and do that, and then I'll show you what to do from there. We got row 16 done. Here is what it's looking like on the loom. We're at this point right here, and now what we got to do is we got to do the decrease for the wrist area. It's very simple. It all stays right on the loom, and what we're going to do is Remember we did the thumb and we brought it out 4 pegs? We need to decrease back to the original pegs we were at. So we need to decrease back past all 4 of those pegs to the original ones. So what we're going to do this decrease, hold this up, and make sure we're doing the end where we did the thumb and everything, of course. Take the last stitch off, put it on, get on there, middle one there. Take the stitch off this side, put it on, middle one there. We loosen the bolt and we move that down so that it's just a line. And now we're going to work 2 rows. You're going to work 2 rows, go around 2 times. You're still going to keep your pattern. You got to keep counting your rows because row 16 was a cable row. So row 20 and 24 will be cable rows as well. And you got to make sure you're doing your V, your color change on the back side too, so you get the V shape all the way, the zigzag all the way up the back. So row 16, so 17 and 18, then you will decrease. Do row 19 and 20, you will decrease, do row 21 and 22, you will decrease your last time, and do row 23 and 24, and then I'll show you what to do from there. So get to row 24, and then I'll show you what to do. Okay, I've decreased down to my original 35 pegs, which was the size that I needed for me. So right here, we're here now. See what it's looking like. At this point, you just make the body as long as you would like. I did the body from row, well, I did my last decrease. I ended row 22, so the beginning of row 23 was my last decrease. So 23 to 60. So from row 23 to row 60, you're going to just go in the round, keep up your pattern every 4 pegs, every 4 rows, you cable. Make sure you're changing your colors on the back. And then when you get to row 60, stop, and we will do just a garter edge brim here, which will be 10 rows. And your first row, I did flat stitch for my first row. Your first row, you're going to do purl stitch so that this right here isn't showing like this. So your first row will be purl, and then you'll rotate purl stitch, a row purl stitch, a row flat stitch for 10 rows, and we'll do a super stretchy cast off. Just get your 60 rows done so you're down to the cuff, and then I can show you how to do that. We got the body as long as we want it. Now we need to do the bottom cuff, which the other one was yellow, so we're going to do it the brown, the blue this time. So we ended on the back side. It's actually 61 rows instead of 60. We're going to cut the yellow, put it over to the side. We don't need that anymore. We'll just weave that in later. What we're going to do is 10 rows of the garter stitch, but we've got to remember our start and end point each time. We ended up being right here, so just make sure you're starting and stopping at the same spot each time. We're going to purl the first row. Your first stitch, couple stitches you're going to need to do, just be real easy with them. That way you don't pull the tail out. So you purl a row, flat stitch a row, purl a row, flat stitch a row. Do that for 10 rows, and then we'll do a super stretchy cast off. We're done with the cuff. Now we need to cast off. Just take the working yarn and wrap it around the part of the loom that you're using 3 times. That just gives you enough yarn to work this cast off. And right here's where I ended. Now the way we do this cast off, this is called the super stretchy cast off. The yarn is coming from this peg, so we're going to skip that peg, go up through. We're going to go back one and pull the working yarn down. Skip one, go up through, go back one, and go down. I'll show you a couple more times. It's coming from this one. Skip one, go up, go back one, and go down. You do this all the way around the loom until you get back to your starting peg. Work this one as well. And then you just take everything off the loom. You just pop it all off the loom, and then I'll show you how to weave in the ends. So do the cast off, pop it off the loom, and flip the glove inside out. It's off the loom, got it inside out. Now a lot of the ends I've already wove in just to save time, but it's pretty simple. All you do is you just take a crochet hook, you pick up stitches, you pull the yarn through, keep it with the same collar, it won't be noticeable on the other side, and then cut with a little bit of a tail on them. And as it stretches and stuff, those will kind of work their way in. If the tail's still a little long, you can trim it more. But what I really wanted to take time to show you guys, right here is the only spot you really need to kind of like sew up, as you can see. And what I do with that, since we're doing, it says 2 different collars, you want it to look kind of neat. You just go back and forth on this side. I'll kind of show you what I'm doing. I'm just picking up stitches. Just pulling the yarn through. See? Now you want to watch, the blue is a little hard to see, but you don't want to like pick up a stitch like that, because then you're just creating a new hole. I look for stitches that are like the tighter stitches to pull through. See, so that way I'm not creating new holes by weaving in the ends here. You just do this all the way across here, and then I check it to make sure, sorry. Alright, I want this stitch right here. I'll get it. There it is. Then I just kind of check it as I go to make sure my holes are filling in. That one's a bit of a loop. We'll get a tighter stitch behind it. See, I just got one spot left over here, which this stitch right here should fill that in. Yep. See, so I've got that filled in, which what I do from here, so I'm going to take the tail up here, weave it down to meet this tail. Then I'm going to kind of tie them together and then run them in opposite directions, just so everything is locked in really good. Okay, so I got both of these down to pretty much, I'll go down one more with that one. So I just make sure, I'm double check, make sure I don't have any holes. And all I'm doing is I'm just doing one little half knot, whatever you want to call that. That way there is no like bulky knot or anything there. And I'm just going to weave it still with the yellow. Down a few stitches on this side. Then I'll weave it down a few stitches on the other side. And then I can cut the ends off. And it's going to have to untwist quite a bit to end up with any holes or to come loose. Okay, let's do just one more. Then we'll flip it inside out. We'll cut the ends off. Flip it back the right side. Take my rings and my watch off so I can put the gloves on to show you exactly how they look. Now there are a couple things I do want to point out with these gloves, just things to watch for when you are doing the pattern. Which, see, I did purl row first when I changed the collar on the cuff for that one. This one I did a flat stitch row first, so you're going to end up with a bit of a line there either way. Alright, now to put the gloves on. Now these are a very snug fit. That's how I wanted them fit. You can make yours, if you don't want yours this snug and your measurements are the same as mine, then just add a couple pegs to it. Make it just a little bigger around as you're doing it. Okay, here we go. Let me zoom out. Oh, guess I wasn't zoomed in very far. So here they are, our Harley Quinn inspired gloves. Got the collar change on the back, and then we got all the cables on the front. A couple things I wanted to point out. Make sure you are twisting your cords tight. Make sure you're twisting the cables. When you're changing colors, make sure you're crossing the yarns over, or else you'll end up with the holes. Like, see, I got a couple there. And if you don't cross it on the back, see? I made sure to do a couple so you could see, and you got to watch because I accidentally did. I wasn't feeling too good when I was working on this glove. I've been kind of under the weather, and I got a couple boo-boos on it. Right there's one. I accidentally purled like half a row. I'm not really sure why. But this I did on purpose so you can see how it would look, because I can go through with a piece of string and kind of like tie that closed. But this is what happens if you don't twist those strands every single time, is you'll end up with holes like that. See, I just did it the one time. But here are the gloves. Alright everybody, that's all I got for you. And out of all that yarn you got, you can make probably, I'd say, 3 sets of gloves. You've got enough yarn. Or you can just make your gloves really long if you want. There you go, guys. I hope you enjoyed this pattern. Any questions or comments, you can leave them in the comments section below, but honestly, my email's in the description below. If you send me an email, I know I will get it, and it is easier for me to respond through emails. I get a lot of comments on my YouTube channel, so unfortunately there are comments that do get missed that I don't respond to. I'm not ignoring you guys. I'm sorry. It's just that it just happens. I'm doing all this kind of on my own, so sometimes I'm not quite with it as much as I should be. But I do hope you guys enjoy this pattern. If nothing else, and of course you don't have to do the cables on the front. You can do the collar change, the zigzag on the front and the back of the gloves if you want. Or you can just do the cables. I mean, it's really up to you. Of course, there is a direct link to the PDF in the description below. And it will have, the pattern is wrote out for the sides that I made with all the notes, and there are some pictures and of course links to, like, if you need just little video clips, there's all that in there as well. Thank you guys so much for watching, and Don't forget to subscribe.